Hello everyone. Can you hear me okay? So welcome to Rooftop Ruby. This is... Thank you. This is Rooftop Ruby, podcast about Ruby, or in other words, Joel's propaganda for his open source. So this is our first ever live show coming to you from RubyConf, San Diego. If you're joining us on the podcast, like from home, welcome and thanks for listening.
All right, so I'm Collin. This is Joel. If you're not, if you're not already friends with us, you should be. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to cover, Joel and I discussed this. We weren't sure if we should mention it or not, but I think it is the elephant in the room, and so I just wanted to bring it up so we can stop thinking about it. I was edged out by Patrick Dempsey this year for People's Sexiest Man Alive. So, yeah, we're not going to let this stand, obviously. There's always next year. But obviously, congratulations to Patrick, I guess. Hey, Joel, how's it going?
It's going great.
Yeah.
How are you?
Pretty good. How was, we rode a roller coaster. I just got the picture of that. How was your trip to here? How's your first day been?
Hold on a minute. We can't skip past the roller coaster.
We're going to get to the roller coaster.
We need to get into the roller coaster.
Okay. Okay.
Do you want to tell them about it?
Yeah, okay, so here's what happened. So Joel and I met up on Sundays, first time we've ever met, and we go, us and our friend Tim, go down to the ocean. We go down to Mission Bay, and I see a roller coaster, and I'm like, we need to do that for the content, because it's going to give us something to talk about. It's going to be great. And the first thing we do is we walk 5 miles almost down to a pier, which the funny part about this was, Joel, there's a sign on the inside, right? Like when you're walking to get up to the pier, this thing's probably 50 feet high maybe, that says, no jumping, no XYZ, whatever. And I say to Joel, I'm like, hey, Joel, no jumping, right? Like as a joke. And as soon as I did, he's like, I want to so bad. And he starts like going up like this. He's like, oh, do you think I could do it? And then I'm like, Joel, you're wearing all your clothes. He's like, it doesn't matter. The last time I jumped off something, I broke my ankle. It doesn't matter. So then we walk back to the roller coaster. And we walk back to Mission Bay where this horrifying wooden roller coaster that's built in 1924 is. And we get on it. We wait in the line, we get on it. And it's very chill, and we're all very cool about it, right, Joel?
Yeah. So Colin's idea was that we would film this, and it would make for good content. And but he will not let me put the film up on the screen. So
the way I would describe this is I made a sound on this roller coaster that if you paid me $1 million right now, I could not do again. Like, do you know there's like, I'm excited screaming that people do? This wasn't that. This was I'm being violently murdered screaming. If you were stabbing me violently, I can't imagine I would make a different sound than that.
It was amazing.
Yeah, and Joel videoed it, so...
So come and find me if you want to see that.
Yeah.
Because it's amazing.
And then of course yesterday, so we've gotten a chance to hang out with all of our great friends on the community day. How was your community day?
Yeah, it was great. I spent some time trying to figure out how to share memory between multiple Ruby processes with Aaron Pedersen. And so we spent some time on that and ultimately decided not to do it. So that was a very successful day.
Yeah, Joel was walking around all day being like, how can I create shared memory
It's
between...
got to be a way.
Yeah, got to be a way. And Aaron would be the person to ask, I guess.
Yeah.
If someone was going to know.
And he did know, and he was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure you can do it. But ultimately, it was just not a good idea. And the complexity we were going to introduce was not worth it.
That makes sense. So, yeah, we've met a lot of great people. We've been hanging out with all our friends. We got to hang out with Roman over here. Roman. It's been he looks just like Maddie Madison, which is an online chef that I like.
One thing we never get to do is just invite our listeners onto the show, like on a whim. So maybe we can just get
Roman, you want to come say hi for a second? So, how'd you get here? How's your conference been? What's it like? This is your first one, right?
It's been great. I think. Hello.
I think they got there you go. There you go.
There we go.
It's been great so far. Oddly enough, not the first time I've been referred to as Matty Matherson, but I was a chef for about 12 years before I became a developer. So I take it as a compliment. Yeah.
Do we need to get your mic on?
It is on. Yeah, maybe just a little closer. Yeah, it was funny yesterday because what'd you say? You're like, not everybody who looks like me and has my mustache is Matty Madison. And I'm like, but probably like 50% of them are.
Yeah, I mean, I've been also called like Uncle Buck, and I think that's like, what's the term? It's like everybody that's white, overweight, and we're not all the same.
Yeah.
So,
What's your? So this is your first tech conference, right? How's it been?
this is not my first tech conference. I've actually been to, I think this is like my 6th one. This is my 2nd Ruby conference. The first one was in Denver. I pivoted in like 21 and went to the Denver Ruby conference there and got kind of addicted to the conference community. Just love meeting people, and I think as remote workers, it's our only opportunity to really get face time with the community and build those things. Also gives us a chance to show our appreciation to the people in our community that are making a lot of the tools that we get to work with on a daily basis.
So when you say you got kind of addicted to the conference community, what you mean is you got into stalking the conference community?
Yes.
I would say that some things should just be left unsaid, even though we're on a podcast.
Yeah.
But if this was a share-all, then yeah, I would say that, proclivity for following people online is probably an interest that a lot of us have. It's sort of like being an investigative journalist.
Well, it's exciting to meet all your internet friends in person.
Even if they don't even know you exist.
Well, the reason we
Yep.
brought this up, so we were hanging out last night, and you were like, people are different when you meet them in person, right? And I said, and our friend Marco Roth was there, and I said something like, yeah, like if you just followed me online, you'd be like, oh, this guy's crazy or whatever. And I expect him to be like, because it's different in person. And instead of like objecting to that, he's just like, yeah, that's true. You would think that.
It's hard to disagree. Marco brings up a lot of valid points on a lot of different subjects,
Yeah.
and I think he's right on the money with this one too.
Well, Roman, we have a very special guest. Aside from you.
Oh, okay. I was about to say.
And her name is Catherine Rickerfort McCreary, Dorothy.
All right.
So
What a performance this morning.
we'd love to bring you up and talk to you. Thank you so much.
Wow, I get a slide? This is full out for
You
last
got a whole
minute.
slide, yeah.
Slide.
No, you're a big get for us.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for agreeing to this.
Yeah.
As soon as we saw you sing this morning, I mean, number one, this is actually pretty big of me
Okay.
because I am generally, when I meet somebody who's like a lot better at singing than me, I do kind of start circling like a wiener dog, like.
Is this a challenge?
No, absolutely not, because I'll lose. I'll lose badly.
I want to see this.
Anyway, but we did want to talk to you because we thought that's just the perfect person. And so you are the founder of, is it Artists Who Code?
Yeah, so I co-founded Artists Who Code with Scott McCreary, who is my husband, and who also co-wrote the piece this morning that we performed at the opening of RubyConf 2023. Yes, and also shout out to Juan Rickerfort, who is the third member of our team who also created this. So a little bit about us. Yes, we are all actual tech people that wrote this piece for RubyConf. We're not hired artists. I mean, we are professional artists too. So that's the whole thing about Artists Who Code is I performed on Broadway for 10 years. I lived in New York. I did a bunch of different shows, 8 shows. My last show was SpongeBob SquarePants on Broadway, where I played Karen the computer. I literally played a computer and then went into computer science. And my husband is now a software engineer, but is also a professional cellist and actor. And my brother Juan, who just walked in the room, hey Juan, what's up, is a product manager and a rapper and pop artist. And so, we love both of these worlds, the arts world and the tech world. And we were thinking for a while that we wanted to dream something up that mashed those two together and bring it to a live audience at a conf. And it happened this morning, and it was so much fun. And I'm glad you were there.
Yeah, you were amazing.
Thank you.
It was so good.
Yeah,
Thanks.
it was pretty great.
Yeah.
So you were on Broadway for 10 years in New York.
Yes.
And then you decided you wanted to do this like magical person transformation and become a tech person.
Because you were playing a computer, right?
Yeah.
Did you get you went? I'm guessing you do like really kind of like method acting. Like
Method
you were
acting,
Really
yeah.
into.
You're like, this is the role of a lifetime.
Yeah.
I am a computer.
Literally.
And
Yeah.
I did visit the Google campus in New York, while I was playing Care on the Computer and thinking that I was doing my research as a method actor. But the reason that I pivoted to tech, so actually it's pretty funny. I started off as a computer science major in college. I switched over to industrial engineering, but that's what I did. And then I couldn't get a job when I graduated, and weirdly, musical theater worked out better for me. And so that's what happened. And then I got to live a bunch of my Broadway dreams and check all these boxes of things I wanted to do, perform alongside some celebrities that I really looked up to, and then. It was a pretty hard life, though, actually. The reality of it is that, unfortunately, for the most part, professional arts doesn't pay very well, even when you're at the very top, which I climbed up really, really high. And even from the top, it was so hard to make a living and pay rent. And they don't treat you as well as the tech world treats, hopefully, software engineers. I hope you're treated well at your jobs. But
I hope so, too.
yeah. And it was just really hard. I actually did an analysis of my net worth over time with each Broadway show that I got. And a Broadway show is very, very hard to land. You're competing against thousands of people who are better looking, better at dancing, have done all these shows before. It's very, very tough competition. And even through fighting all of that, at the end there was crumbs left. Yeah. It was very, very tough. And so that's why I got interested in software engineering. I'd had that engineering background always. It was always something I was, interested in. My dad's an engineer. He actually came to watch today. But yeah, and so I'd heard about boot camps because I had a professional opera singer friend in New York who got me a job at a startup when I was in between shows and collecting unemployment and struggling to pay the rent. And she was like, "Why don't you come work at this company?" And it was a really shocking deep dive into the world of startups. And so, but from there, our team was full of engineers who had gone to boot camps. This was 2015, and they were telling me all about it. I was like, this is intriguing. And so that's when I got excited about it, and I went to boot camp and got my first job.
Was it a Ruby boot camp, or did?
It was a mix of things. So it was a Ruby on Rails, and we learned React and JavaScript and SQL. It was a little bit of everything, sampler platter. Yeah.
That's amazing. I think it's really interesting how, you were fighting to do, level up in Broadway, even though, you said the compensation's, awful.
Yeah.
And I think it's, to me, it's kind of the things that are the most important that we do just always seem to be not very well compensated. And they're still important to do.
Yeah.
And I think, that's kind of the same with open source. So many people in the Ruby community dedicate their lives, hours and hours to open source that is probably the most impactful work that they do.
Yeah.
And it's not appreciated. And I think that's
absolutely. I totally felt that when Mats gave his keynote today and he was
Yeah.
talking about the passion that goes into it and how important the community is. I
Right.
I understood that. It felt like the same thing I feel for performing on stage and all that.
Awesome. Tell us about Artists Who Code. How, what is that? How do people join it? What do you do?
So Artists Who Code was something that I kind of dreamt up when I was going through the lowest part of, if any of you in the room are boot camp grads, I think you would probably agree that the lowest part of the whole process is when you've graduated boot camp and you're trying to get that first job. And it's a lonely process. You don't have the structure and community of your boot camp cohort anymore. And you're just constantly being judged and turned down. It kind of feels like auditioning. But I think the saving grace of that whole period was all of these wonderful meetups in New York, because I was living in New York at the time, that were hosted by great organizations like Women Who Code and, all these similar ones. And that was where like I really found my people, and kind of like you were saying earlier, like getting addicted to like the conf people, your conf friends. Like that's where I found community and like honestly like salvation in this like very dark time in my life where I was just like, who am I? I'm not an actor anymore, but am I a software engineer? I don't know. Like, and nobody wants me. All these things I was feeling. But at these events, I found friendship, and I was pairing with people, and we were whiteboarding problems, but I still felt like I was kind of not really able to be my full self, and that I was trying to fit in and put on my engineering costume and fit in with the engineers. But the second I'd find someone who kind of hiding in the closet, like, I used to be a pianist, we would click immediately and bond, and then they would go the extra mile to like introduce me, get me an interview at their company. And so I was like, I want more of this. And I also, my husband, who transitioned also from professional performing as a musician and an actor into tech, he kind of did it the year before me, and so he kind of helped guide me through this whole transformation. It's like, even though it sounds like a magical transformation, it takes a lot of like chiseling and like, just like creating a LinkedIn for the first time when you've come from a world that doesn't care about LinkedIn, and you dance on stage, and it's just a whole transformation. And so we created Artists Who Code because I'd always wanted to bring those creatives in a room together who also understood tech, and I wanted to help them go through this transformation that was so hard for me because I couldn't have done it without like the two people that I had found who had done it before me that guided me. And I was like, if I hadn't had those people, I feel like I would have failed or given up. And I wanted to provide that support for other people in a more structured way, in a way that was scalable, in a way that felt personal and welcoming. And so we created Artists Who Code at the beginning of the pandemic because I had just landed my first job at Stitch Fix. Thank you, Ms. Saki, my manager over there, for hiring me. But I'd been there for 2 weeks. I was worried I was going to get fired. And yet I still felt like I was in a better, more secure place than all of my very hardworking professional artist friends whose entire industry had been shut down. Like Broadway went dark. It never goes dark. It went dark. It was a bad time where even our bosses were losing their jobs. You're like, that's when you know it's bad. They're not just cutting people at the bottom. The whole thing is dead. And we thought about ways to help. And one of I have like a Trello board just full of millions of ideas about ways to jam like my arts and tech loves. But one of them was a business idea to create an online platform for people to teach remotely. That didn't exist at the time. Most arts people didn't even know what Zoom was. And they all wanted to teach, I have all these Broadway credits. I want to teach aspiring young actors, and how do I reach more people? And so we thought about that. But I was like, I feel like that's a Band-Aid to the problem, which is that like we want to teach artists how to have a sustainable income and a healthier lifestyle, but it also not in a place where we say you don't have to hide that part of you. You should celebrate it. We still love it. We encourage you to continue your art, but like why not have exercise all of this discipline that you've put into your string instrument or whatever into something that is new and exciting, where you can build and you can own it and you can make money. And so that was like really why we picked Artists Who Code as the way to help people, because we wanted to like help transform their whole lives. And I think it really has done that. I mean, that sounds so cheesy, but I don't know, like getting that first tech job for me really did change my life. Like I remember I called my mom and dad on FaceTime, and oh gosh, now I'm getting emotional. I'm also really tired because I was nervous about the performance this morning. But it really did change my life, and it's been so fun to get to know the engineering world and kind of cross-pollinate and understand each other, because there's a lot of things that like I think the engineering world has all these strengths in, but they also have some weaknesses. And like in the arts world, it's kind of the opposite. And like it's so beautiful to bring those two things together and kind of see like what new things you can create, like a silly opening musical number for months.
So of the artists,
Yes.
is music like the biggest portion of them, or like are there other disciplines? I have a theory about music and programming I'll share with you.
Oh, I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope you demonstrate with some singing. But yeah, it's so funny because I actually first thought of it, my initial idea was Dancers Who Code, because I'm also a dancer. But then when I was asking my husband to help me do this, he was like, wait, let's make it Artists Who Code, because he's like, I have a bunch of classical music friends. And so the initial seed of Artists Who Code, it was like 7 people. We texted our friends, and we had to like beg them to come because they didn't know what it was. It was mostly like my Broadway friends, so musical theater actors, and then his classical music friends. And so that's like still continues to be like big, strong roots to this day. But we also have, like jazz musicians, and we have some like lighting designers, and we have some painters and things like that. I think the main thing is that when we like kind of offer like this like all of this help from like that before boot camp, during boot camp, and after and beyond, like that is really for people who have practiced the arts professionally and depended on it for a living, because there's like this shared understanding and struggle that like, I don't know, that we wanted to help people through. So it's all kinds of art, but people who have done it for a living professionally.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So my theory with
Okay,
music
I'm
in
ready
this,
to
'cause I
hear
feel like
this.
you meet a lot of musicians in programming, not on your level, but like musicians, right?
Yeah.
And I think the relationship is this, and you'll tell me if I'm wrong, because because I'm not a Broadway star.
But you can be.
Maybe. That's a pivot.
Yeah.
But I think the relation is this. They're both things that are kind of math. Like, if you boil it down enough, it's all sort of math, but that you wouldn't be very good at if you thought about it that way when you're doing it.
Exactly.
That's what I think the relationship is.
I love that. Oh, I love this theory. I like actually want to do, I'm not going to do it at this conf, but I want to do a lightning talk about how tap dancing, which is one of my favorite forms of dance, is very much like math and like programming. I don't know, have you ever seen an amazing tap dancer hoofing?
I watched The Righteous Gemstones. They had a tap dancing segment.
Okay,
Is it like
great.
that?
Okay, yeah, sure. But it's like all these beautiful, complicated rhythms. It's like drumming, but with your feet and your whole body. But I had this amazing teacher who like actually learned like a lot of these crazy steps, and I could do them. I could pull them off, but I didn't really understand like what were like the core components of all these steps I was doing. And then I had this teacher later in my life who taught me that all of tap dancing is just like the same 8 building blocks. One is like the ball of your foot like this, the other is like your full foot, the other is digging your heel, another is your toe, and there's a few more, but then that's it. Those are the only building blocks. And then you combine them in different ways, and you can like syncopate them, or you can do them at the same time, you can do it with one foot, all that stuff. And it kind of feels a lot like coding. It's just like at its core, it's just like, zeros and ones, but it comes together beautifully. But you don't think about all that when you're, making the magic happen.
Yeah.
Do you end up creating sequences of those moves as well?
Yes, so combining the sequences and the patterns, and then there's a lot of rhythmic. You can write down tap, and it looks quite mathematical. There's like the AABA pattern, and all that stuff.
So you're kind of layering on various abstractions on top of those base moves.
Yes, absolutely.
It's amazing.
It's so interesting. Are there any other kind of like correlations between what you've done before and like what you're doing now in tech? I think
Yeah.
I always think of the kind of programming that I do. It doesn't feel like a hard science to me in many ways. Like I think the thing that I find the most interesting is like almost more like creative writing, like trying to think about how do I communicate an idea.
Yeah.
And I think that's like more on the kind of art side of things than the hard science side of things, especially in Ruby. I don't know about maybe Python or other programming languages where they're more.
Less so, I assume.
Well, I think the thing that's beautiful about Ruby, right, is that it's like it's all about the developer's happiness, and it's kind of instinctual, right? It just kind of flows, and you can get into this flow state. I don't know if that's how you feel when you code, but
Yeah, it's like entertaining.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah,
you're trying to
totally.
make people happy,
exactly.
either by writing code or performing a show.
Yeah, and I think another correlation that I discovered recently was so when actors audition for a show, we have the whole show done. Like I can perform, I'm doing the job in the audition already. So I'm like, I have it memorized, I'm singing the whole thing. And they give you like basically the full script of the show, and it's a new show, so it's not something I've seen before. Like 2 days or 24 hours before you audition. And within 24 hours, you have to like not only have be prepared to sing like 3 or 4 songs from the show. You have to make original character choices about them. You have to make it entertaining. You have to stand out. And you also have to understand the whole context of the script of the full show, like the characterization and what your role is in the plot. And so I was very used to, all actors are used to like ingesting all of this information, all of these PDFs from our agents, and then having to like do this performance in 24 hours and be judged by, very frightening and impressive directors. And there's no way, if you were to like look at every note on that sheet music, on the like 50 pages of sheet music they gave you, and try to learn it perfectly, you could not pull off that performance in 24 hours. And I was struggling a lot when I was like, so I work at Stitch Fix, and we have some like, legacy code base. And I was struggling because I think when I would get a new ticket and touch part of the code base I'd never touched before, I would really try and understand like every bit of code that was happening and how it all linked together. And then I realized I should use the same skill that I've had, for years, where you just like kind of skim through the whole script and be like, okay, that's the most important part. This is my gut feeling about where this is going to go next. Like this is the high point, this is the low point, this is clearly important, this is not that important, and kind of prioritize, and like a project manager or a product manager, like prioritize which parts you're going to focus on with this very limited amount of time. And once I like put those glasses on, my productivity at work was so much better, and also my stress level about taking on this ticket.
Yeah, I feel like there's got to be a lot of stress in like being a professional performer. But being an overpaid tech worker also has stress. Is it? How do those?
Wow.
How do those? This is why we're the bad boys of Ruby podcasting. We're the Ruby podcast the mainstream Ruby media doesn't want you to know about. Except we did get invited to do this, so maybe I don't know how much more. I guess that's a little mainstream. What was I asking you?
Something about stress.
Stress. How does it relate? Like, how is it different? Have you found like new kinds of stress that you never experienced before that you're comfortable talking about in front of your coworkers?
Sure. I think like the concept of like what is risky is very different in the tech world versus the arts. And I think that like that's the thing, is that like I'm not judging people for having like less stressful lives. Like I'm encouraging more artists to be like, there's a different life. Because I think when you are so driven by something that you are passionate about and you're tempted to give your whole life to it, you like forget to research, like, is this going to be a healthy life for me that, I can support my family and all this stuff. And so, I think that like, it's been so nice to be in a workplace where I don't have to worry about the next paycheck and that kind of thing. And it's been nice that like the things I stress about are like, oh, how can I best implement this ticket? It's like kind of like smaller things, like less like at a base level, how do I survive? But then it does become more artistic, because I think when those base needs are taken care of, I then can create art. This is like an interesting thing we've talked about in Artists Who Code, which is like, do you need to be a starving artist in order to create great art? And I think no. But I think there's a lot of artists who are kind of more purist about that. So, I mean, I'm like 3.5 years into having, I have to phrase it to some purist artists as like, oh, I have my day job. But it's not just a day job to me. But when you're hopping between worlds, I kind of have to phrase one as the priority over the other. It's very like High School Musical. Like people think you can only do one thing. But anyway, like coming back to the stress, like I feel stresses, but they are at like a more... a level that is not so like vital to living, which is great. And so I can stress about things like Artists Who Code was possible because I had this job that was paying me enough that I could spend all of my free time, passionately figuring out how to help people. And I stressed out a lot about that. And, I was like, it was a lot of work, but I think it's nice to be able to then apply, like I think as humans, like we like to be comfortable, but we all also like to hustle on something, and it's nice to like apply that hustle, but like a little more comfortably in your free time, and then you can really pick what you want to do that on. Because when you are stressed and you have to apply that stress to making a living, it's kind of not a great combination.
Yeah. So this has come up in therapy with me before.
Okay, cool.
Where discussing, it's like we can tell my therapist being like, well, we can tell things are going better because we're not just talking about like survival level stuff anymore.
Yeah.
Like we're talking about like actual things in your life, not just like, like base like fight or flight kind of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think it's amazing to have, people with more diverse experiences in this.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if everybody has the same... I don't know. I think it gives you better perspective. I think you were saying that.
Absolutely. And something too that like there are things when I was talking kind of about the like strengths and weaknesses of each field. Like now, like this RubyConf opening number presentation was so fun because I got to mash up both worlds. And like something that I love about tech is that the leadership is not necessarily super like dictatorship style or like top down, and that like well, sometimes but it feels a lot more collaborative. Like it's interesting because like you would think the arts are collaborative, but at least in professional Broadway it is a dictatorship. You'd never ever question the director or the assistant director or anything, and it's like a ridiculous thing to pitch your idea for like how the number should go. And that's fine. I think that's effective in certain cases, but like now that like I've been writing code, I like itch to like I want to like deconstruct the script that I'm, I don't want to just like read the script and pull it off as an actress. Like I want to pull it apart and make it better and all that stuff. And so like if I ever circle back, I mean, I do plan to, but like when I circle back on artistic projects, I now bring kind of a lot of that collaborative spirit from tech and that like community building aspect to when I work on artistic projects. And it's been so much fun because it's like a very different vibe than like that kind of like old school like ballet world collaboration.
Sounds like you're going to go back and transform Broadway.
I hope so.
this.
That's like something fun that like I have a lot of ideas for artists who code and what it could do next. Like our main focus at first was like just helping professional artists pivot into tech. But I have a lot of ideas about how we can use tech as a powerful tool to improve the experience of artists on Broadway and to improve it as a business. Like I'm sad that like part of the problem is that the whole industry doesn't make money. Like we get treated like shit as actors, but it's because there's already so little money to go around. So now I'm thinking like bigger level. Like how do we price tickets better, and how do we get people to want to like come to live events, and how do we market things better, and how can we use tech as a tool to help all of this. And then the same thing can go in reverse, is like how can we especially with like collaboration and pair programming, like I think if every engineer had to take like a partnering dance class where you had to like learn to lift each other and partner and lead and play the lead and play the follower and or also do scenes and improvise with each other and support each other, I think it would improve like how we all pair program together. And so there's a lot of fun ideas there that are all tangential to artists who code.
Sounds like we need to do that after the show.
Yeah.
You and me.
I'm down.
Yeah.
Why not?
Why not? I was wondering if maybe you could talk to Joel too about that thing about the top down, because he did tell me to never question him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're going to have to workshop this later.
So, okay, before we get to the end of our time, I did want, how did this thing this morning actually come together? Because you said who
this
did
is
it,
fun.
but you didn't tell
Yes.
us, like, how.
Okay, so I don't know if she's in the room, but my coworker Zarella. Yeah, she's here. Okay, Zarella. So Zarella is part of the awesome RubyConf committee 2023. She's my fellow engineer at Stitch Fix, and she told me that she's volunteering for RubyConf and that they were taking submissions for talks. And I, at Stitch Fix, had given a talk about artists who code before, and it had gone over really well, and they wanted to share it with a broader audience. So I was encouraged to submit my talk. And she encouraged a lot of us to attend a call for proposal coaching session with some members of the RubyConf committee. And so I attended that, and I met some great people, including Adarsh, who I think was a guest on your show. And I got really excited, and I made this was my first CFP I ever submitted. And I got really excited, I submitted it, and then I got turned down. And I got really sad about it. It hurt just as much as when I used to not get auditions, even though I thought I had built up a lot of scars around that. And I was really, really disappointed because I had always dreamed of bringing a splash of Broadway to an engineering conference. And I knew that Adarsh had also mentioned that he was interested in that too. And so I was like, you know what, I want to revisit this. Even though my talk got turned down, I reached out to Adarsh again and I said, hey, I know you wanted to do some musical theater at the conf, and let's talk about it a little more because I think I can help you. And so he gave me a bunch of ideas that he was thinking about, and the one that I was most excited about was, it was just one of the bullet points in this email, was an opening musical number to kick things off before Mott's. And so I was looking at that, and over wine one night with my husband Scott, who co-founded Artists Who Code with me, and also chatting with Juan, because we've all been in both worlds. We started dreaming up this idea for a skit, kind of based on The Wizard of Oz, because they were like, okay, Catherine, what do you want to do? We know what Adarsh wants. What do you want to do? And I was like, well, I just want to get up there and sing like Beyonce and make people laugh and make a bunch of engineering jokes, and bring these two worlds together. And so we came up with this idea of a skit. So the skit kind of came from, Scott is very experienced in skits, because actually the way we met was we met on an a cappella reality TV show where we competed against each other. And he was in this group called the Yale Whiff and Poofs. And
Oh.
The Whiff and Poofs, yes, they're very
No, I know
famous.
someone, yeah.
Okay, you know a Whiff and Poof?
I worked with a Whiff and Poof.
All right, they're very smart. And they also love to do skits in their a cappella concerts. And so he was just kind of like super pro at having like written and performed a bunch of these skits. And so he's like, let's apply this to, the engineering conference. And I'd also watched a lot of different art forms. So I had watched Juan he was part of an improv rap team in New York. And they would do this thing it was kind of like a Hamilton style musical, but completely improvised with like a figure in history that an audience member would like pitch. Okay. And I watched them do this kind of thing. And like the way they constructed the whole musical on the spot was they would ask like, okay, who are the antagonists for this person? And who did they love? And what were their tics? And so I kind of like, we figured this all out. I even asked ChatGPT, like, what do Ruby developers like hate, and what do they? I was like pairing with ChatGPT as we were like refining the script. But we already had the whole idea for like the Wizard of Oz, and I love to give presentations. Like at Stitch Fix, I discovered my love for like giving presentations. So I'm really good with the slides. So like Scott was like kind of riffing ideas over wine about the construct, and then I started putting the slides together. And then to finesse all of the jokes, because I had them written down, then I like paired with ChatGPT to make sure. Just kind of tweak them. And then I used like my arts instinct from having performed a lot of comedy to like trim it down and all that stuff. So that's kind of how it came to be. So what happened was I then presented that whole thing to Adarsh, and he loved it, and we were like, great, let's make it happen. And this was all like 3 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. And then you did.
And then we did, and we made it happen. And it was actually Adarsh's idea to, like, we always had this guest spot for Glinda. And I didn't have any ideas who it should be, but we just knew that it should be someone who is well known and loved by the Ruby community that is not Glinda-like at all. And so he was like, I got you. I got the perfect person.
You failed in one way then.
Really? You think
not
Aaron,
Glinda-like.
You think Aaron is very Glinda-like? Actually, Aaron was quite convincing as Glinda today.
He seems pretty magical.
Yeah, I'm actually
I think he went method in his
He did go method in his acting. So Aaron was the perfect Glinda. So good job, Adarsh, in casting Glinda. I'm actually really sad because I brought the Glinda wig and the crown and the wand, but what I didn't know was that Aaron had bought a full Glinda dress. But because I had told him, like, I have a wig for you, he, like, didn't bring it because he was like, oh, I got to do what the boss says. So I feel really bad, but maybe at a future conf, we'll see the dress.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this was amazing. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun last minute little shindig. Yeah.
Well, like I said, big get for us. So.
Cool.
No,
well,
but we really appreciate it.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. And, okay. Yeah, round of applause. So, Joel, what's happening at 6 p.m. tonight?
Oh, yeah. So, 6 p.m. tonight, we've got a Rooftop Ruby party.
Yeah. There's a Rooftop Ruby party on the grass. It's a non-rooftop Ruby party.
Yeah.
This is amazing. This is how cool Ruby people are, right? We were just talking, and Joel's like, yeah, it'd be cool if we could do a party someday that was like our podcast thing.
On a rooftop.
He said on a rooftop. They don't have a rooftop here. I'm like, how are you complaining? British people, right? Like, guess which one's the Brit? He's like, it's not on a rooftop. No, so we put this out on Mesa. I'm like, somebody should sponsor a Rooftop Ruby party. And then I was like, there's no way, like, whatever, right? And within 36 hours, like, we got sponsors. And then I was like, I have to actually figure out how you organize something like this now. So tonight at 6 to 9, over in front of Monkey Bar, which is like the one with the lobby, over in that grass area, the AstroTurf with the fire, it's going to be roped off. We're going to have drink tickets, so get drink tickets from me and Joel later. And these are our sponsors. So if we get a round of applause, we've got Flagrant, let's hear it for Sidekick. Echo Bind, and of course, Honey Badger. Which honestly, Joel, I would say, these are like S-tier sponsors. These are really good sponsors. So I'm very, so we're all really excited. We hope to see you all at the party. Thank you all so much for coming to this. We hope to, do more things like this. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you. It's great to see you in person.
It's great to see you in person.